Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Omni version of a fairly common mech with the Blackjack. This thing has been around for a while now and is probably one of the most common, or pretty close, omnimech from the Inner Sphere factories in the world. It's not the best mech out there. You're going to have a whole lot of people complain about a whole lot of things about them. I do have my own complaints about it, but in terms of being a decent trooper mech, it does the work perfectly fine. And as you can see here, there's quite a few different variants and variations of the main design, all of which are decent enough. That's the whole thing with the Blackjack Omni. It isn't the best out there, but it definitely is far from the worst. The people at GM did send me a few of them for review and analysis. We're probably not going to buy them locally, even their newer version, but I'm happy to give them a bit of advice and a bit of design specs if required for the upgraded versions that they're working on right now. So let's get into it. Introducing Omni technology to the Inner Sphere was not that complicated once you add the base idea down. Draconis Combine did manage to figure it out fairly quickly because they were smart about it. They went around and tried to capture as many omnimechs as possible. They had a slew of actually mint omnimechs after the Battle of Wolcott, where they basically told the other guys, hey, Smoke Jaguars, if we fight you and we win, can we get a whole bunch of those things for free? And the people at Clan Smoke Jaguars kind of messed up on this one. And another thing that they did, they had multiple information gathering raids within clan space during the Year of Peace. If you've played one of the more recent Battle Lightning campaign mode, you will have played a part of those raids here on either side, either trying to steal clan technology as part of the Amphibian Light Assault group or defending a planet out of the Clan Smoke Jaguar. It's an interesting game, always fun to do. The base idea of the omnimech itself is actually pretty simple once you wrap your end around it, and it's really the programming of the battle and command computer that gets a little bit more complex, and recalibrating the gyro all the time. There's a whole lot of little things going on, but if you've got the base idea, you know how to do it. And of course, if you capture a few technicians and a few scientists from the clans, it'll make things even easier for you. In 3052, the people at Lucian Armor Work brought out the Raptor, which was the official first Inner Sphere Omnimech, which is quite a machine. You will have to talk about it at some point. While Lucian Armor Work really held all the card in this particular technological exchange, they weren't ready to start mass-producing brand new Omnimechs overnight. Most of their early designs and some of the newer machines were basically rebrand of original machines and upgrade to existing chassis. The Owens is basically an upgraded Jenner. The Strider is basically a Cicada if it wasn't absolutely terrible and held together by its paint. And you also had rework of clan machines like the Blackhawk KU and the much bigger Sunder. Basically, they took what they had, tried to figure out how they could make it work, and how they could put in pods on them. It worked fairly well, and after getting some knowledge of how it worked, they were ready to sell it to other nations. More rebrands started coming out around that time as well, with two other machines coming out from other companies. Well, not really other companies. Basically, you sold the rights to something to Lucian Armor Work, and Lucian Armor Work told you how to make an omnimech out of it. Basically, this was a way for various companies to try to get that Omni technology from Lucian Armor Work in various roundabout ways. The first one was Coventry Metal Works trying to get some info on the Omni technology by selling the Firestarter license to the people at Lucian Armor Work. The Firestarter is extremely popular and a quite decent machine, and Lucian Armor Work basically reworked the thing into the Firestarter Omni, which became a fairly standard battle mech, Omni mech afterwards. It's a little bit weird to think about it because people at Coventry were really happy to just keep that Firestarter close to their breast, and they really just wanted the technology. They basically wanted to sell the license for it to Lucian Armor Work, and Lucian just give them how the Omni technology worked. It didn't quite work out for them as well as they wanted, but, getting a new mech and being able to reverse engineer what you got there was still a good thing. The next one was actually Xray Metal Industries of the St. Ives Compact, who wanted to do the same thing with the Blackjack. And in their case, they didn't really want the Omni technology, they just wanted something new that they would be able to build and sell locally. Funnily enough, Xray doesn't really have the license for the Blackjack. Well, they have a license to build it through a bunch of weird sideways. It's really GM that holds the cards there. So the Blackjack Omni, in the end, yes, it's designed by Lucian Armor Work, built in no small part by Xray, but all the money basically goes to GM. Well, not directly. There's at least a fairly large license fee that goes back up. It's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a problem, but, in the end, everybody was happy. The first wave of Blackjack Omnis came out of Lucian Armor Work, and then Xray Metal Industries got the specs and started working on their own. Later on, Arian Battletech Unlimited got the specs as well and started building them after they had a deal with Lucian Armor Work. The whole thing was pretty nice, but there were a few problems with the export production version of the Lucian Armor Works 1 because they didn't work quite as well as the original. There were compatibility issues with all sorts of pods, especially once you started putting clan weapons on them. They didn't work quite right. There were a few eyebrows that were raised after Lucian Armor Works' personal versions of the Blackjack Omni didn't have those issues, so people started asking questions, militaries started asking questions, and there were lawsuits and deals. There were upgrade kits being sent left and right to various data packages being traded, upgrades to computers, and things were fixed later on, even though it ended up costing a lot of money to a lot of people. The Jihad, though, was really not kind to the Inner Sphere Omni-Mech production. The main production facility was Lucian Armor Works facilities on Lucian, and that one was nuked by Black Dragon partisans and some jihadis and all sorts of weird things going on. And that also meant that Lucian Armor Works needed to raise some cash really quickly in order to repair things and get things moving again. Arian managed to renew their Blackjack 2 Omni license on better term, including additional design rights, and then they did the exact same thing that Lucian Armor Works did earlier, and started to fill it up with a bunch of proprietary software. Big corporations are big corporations. They do these kinds of things until they get sued, and they got sued later on. Other things happened, but during the Jihad, people had very few questions to ask, and very much getting mechs and weapons to fight all sorts of people, so things got a little bit weird once again. In this whole kerfuffle, the only people who had very few issues were the good people at General Motors, who were the original designer of the Blackjack. Like I said, they just kept piling up the money from the licenses that Lucian Armor Work had to pay them to be able to sell the license of the Blackjack Omni to other people. It got a little bit confusing. This whole licensing and dealing and all that stuff didn't really affect them in any way, and they had their own production facility for the Blackjack Omni because, it's their mech, so they just told Lucian Armor Works, it's our machine, just give us the plans, and we'll just call it even. They did suffer some damage during the Jihad, but since they were the people that actually knew how to build the darn thing, and the people actually knew that when they were buying it, they had the GM logo on it, and the OmniMech was actually going to work with every pod that you put on it, the people at GM kept making money and kept building Blackjacks, and nowadays I would say the majority of the Blackjack Omnis that you see out there at least have some GM parts on them. So what is a Blackjack Omni? It's 5 tons heavier than your original Blackjack at 50 tons, and it uses a Nissan 200 XL, a fairly common engine, not the most common out there, but common enough to get a speed of 64 kilometers per hour. This might sound slow for an Omni mech, but for the Inner Sphere machines, that's basically what you're going to get. You also have a full set of jump jets, giving you a jump jet range of 120 meters. Which is decent enough and gives you enough mobility to be able to be comparable to machines that are a little bit faster. You're not going to be able to outrun a clan mech, but you're going to be able to, outrun and outmaneuver a lot of Inner Sphere ones. You do have the 9.5 tons of standard plates, giving you decent enough protection for a mech this size, and an endo steel chassis to save a little bit of weight. But the problem is that it's rather bulky, which is a problem on omnimechs that are going to need pod space. You still have 26.5 tons of pod space, so you can stick quite a few weapons on there. And I would say it's rather massive for a mech in this particular category. Your primary configuration of the Blackjack Omni really mimics your original Blackjack while scaling things up a little bit. The original Blackjack mounts a pair of 2 class autocannons in its arm, and in this case you rather get a pair of Ultra 5 class autocannons in the arm, giving you a massive amount more firepower, but you do lose a little bit on range there, which is not a big trade-off in my opinion. You also have a pair of medium laser on each arm as well, basically again mimicking the original Blackjack with 4 medium lasers. That's enough to give you a very good punch at shorter range, and it's going to do enough to be a problem. You have a decent engagement range. You're able to get into position to fire all of those weapons. Things are going to get pretty bad. You're going to see some more modern versions with ER medium lasers being mounted instead, sometimes only a pair of them, so you don't, burn yourself alive trying to shoot things. It's a decent enough setup in my book. At closer range and against infantry, you get a set of 4 machine guns, basically allowing you to delete the infantry altogether in a single burst of fire, or just tread an unarmored target or lightly armored target fairly quickly. Some people say that they would probably have gone with additional ammo for the autocannons or more heat sinks or, various things. But in this case, you have to look at just how much space you really have on the mech in the inside once you start working. And that's where things get a little bit difficult to do with the Blackjack Omni. Alpha configuration is a personal favorite of mine here. It's probably because of personal deformation, but I quite like that particular design. You get a LRM rack in each arm, 20 racks, so it's big enough, and you get 2 tons of reload, allowing you to bombard long enough that you're going to be able to make a difference. Each side torso mounts a medium laser for close range defense, and you also have a small laser in the center torso, for active presence. You can get those upgraded to ER versions fairly easily, or add ammo by taking off the medium lasers if really required. It's the kind of thing that I would have learned to pilot mechs on in the past. It's very decent. It's able to do what you need it to do, and as an omnimech, well, if you no longer need it to be a bombardment platform, well, you strip that thing off, and you put back the big guns and the arms. Bravo configuration is also a long-range support unit, but this one is a little bit more varied and a little bit more popular with some people, I will say. The main gun is a Gauss rifle mounted in the left arm, fed by 16 steel balls in the associated torso, giving you, decent enough medium-range engagement capability for long enough that you're going to be able to be a threat to quite a few things. The Intersphere Gauss rifle having the same range as the Clan Gauss rifle, or at least close enough, means that this thing is going to be able to be a threat to other Clan mediums as well. On the other side, you've got a 10 rack of Artemis 4 guided LRMs, also with 2 tons of reload, meaning you're going to be able to stay in the fight long enough to make a difference. You have that emotional support small laser that can help you if something gets close, and your targeting computer is bound to a C3 slave unit, which is very useful with those long-range weapons as long as you're in a C3 unit. You could probably swap out that C3 unit for an additional medium laser or an additional ton of ammo on either weapons, and things won't go too bad. Charlie configuration goes back to using big guns, and in this case, it's a pair of Midron XL LB10X autocannons. It's probably the most common LB10X out there, and one of the best one in the end as well. And if you're anywhere close to the Federated Suns, you're going to be able to find them really quickly. You've got 2 tons of shared ammo between them, allowing you to carry both clusters and slugs, or, 2 sets of clusters if you're going to be serving as an anti-air unit. At closer range, you do get a pair of medium lasers, which is a decent enough set of weapons, and that small laser, which gives you a little bit of emotional support. Of course, all of those can easily be upgraded to ER versions as long as it's not a Lucian Armor Works original or one of the Irian's rebrand, where swapping parts on configurations is not as easy as it should. Just make sure you get the latest version of the firmware on your computer and you should be fine. Ammunition dependencies is a problem on many Blackjack versions, but Delta configuration really tries to work around this. In order to make sure that you're going to be able to fire those weapons that are going to not use ammo, you get 3 additional heat sinks to cool down a little bit more. Your main guns in this setup is a PPC and a pair of large laser, giving you a very good, I would say, medium range engagement firepower. The PPC is going to have a bit of a minimum range, but the large lasers don't, so you're going to be able to, take things out fairly easily. At closer range, you get a pair of medium lasers and medium pulse lasers, giving you good brackets of range for your different weapons and engagement. And you've got that cute little small laser to round things up because, well, in the end, you have an extra half ton that you gotta use in some way. Echo configuration was originally designed by Irian in the Free Worlds League military in 3059 using some of their more specialized equipment. Your main gun is either an ER large laser or a light Gauss rifle with about the same range bracket. Well, the light Gauss rifle is actually a crazy long range weapon, and you've got 2 tons of steel balls to fire in that light Gauss rifle. Backing this up for indirect fire support, you also have a 10 rack of LRM fed by 2 tons of support. You will see a few people sacrifice reloads on either the Gauss rifle or the LRM to add Artemis guidance to the launcher. Finally, you still have that ER small laser to give you just a tiny little bit more short-range punch. It's not super fantastic if something gets really close to you, but at longer range, it's going to do a pretty good job, and it's mobile enough to be able to get into fancy positions. The 3061 Foxtrot configuration was originally put forward by GM to take advantage of some of their own equipment. You can tell it's a Federated Sun machine because the right arm now mounts an Ultra AC-10 to give you some good damage at decent range and, spend a lot of money on ammo. In the left torso, you get an ER PPC, giving you a very good engagement range, but, it's going to run a little bit odd, but, it evens out. 2 ER medium lasers give you decent engagement range and damage on the other side, and you still have that fancy little ER small laser to help out. Extra double heatsink, make sure that you're able to keep things running even though you shoot more things, as some people will be crazy and take some out and add ammo to the Ultra 10, because that's how some Mechwarriors are. Next up is Romeo configuration, which you can't really use on many export Lucian Armor Works model or most of the Irian ones without the full firmware upgrade because, well, most of the weapons are not locally sourced, namely they're not built in the Inner Sphere at all. The field kit was built during Operation Bulldog like most of those Romeo configuration, and it uses clan technology, well, in its entirety in this case. The main gun is a Gauss rifle in the left arm fed by 2 tons of reload, and you can use standard Inner Sphere rounds for that one because a 30-centimeter ball of steel is, if it's built in the clan space or in Inner Sphere space, there's not going to be much difference. On the other arm, you have that big large pulse laser and 3 medium pulse laser, allowing you to basically chop things up as soon as they get close by, and it's going to be quite efficient and quite quick. And you get an ER small laser, once again, in the center torso here just to fill out that half ton. But since it's a clan one, it's basically just as good as a medium laser in most situation. If you're broke or if you have issues too, well, you can take it out and replace it with an Inner Sphere ER small laser or a regular small laser, and there won't be that much of a difference. Uniform configuration is meant to be used in underwater operations, but you can't use UMUs because you've got those silly ARD-mounted jump jets. That's why you probably should never mount anything ARD on an omnimech, but in the early days of Inner Sphere Omnis, it's a little bit more understandable because they had no idea how things really worked. You have a set of Argel capsule on this one as well, mounted in each arm and each torso in order to increase its survivability underwater, which is quite significant. It also raises the price quite significantly, and those things are not easy to get outside of buying them off Clan Seafox, so not the easiest thing to get around. For weapons, you get 5 racks of long-range torpedoes with 3 tons of reloads overall, which means you're going to be able to stay in the fight quite some time, and you're going to be able to use some specialty ammo, even though underwater specialty ammos are a little bit rarer. In the side torsos, you get a light PPC, so you're going to be able to get very good range underwater. PPCs are some of the better weapons to use while underwater, and you got that ER small laser to round things up. Of course, you can take out the Argel capsules and move things around a little bit and make this a ground combat unit with long-range missile launchers, and it's going to work decently well as well. Let's just have a quick look on how you would actually do that here. So you go in the mech design tool of choice that you would use. I prefer this one here. Mech Lab is quite good, and it allows you to, arrange things how you want them. I'll take out the Argel because that's the extremely expensive bit and not really required while you're on the ground. I'm not going to mess with the long-range torpedo launchers. I'm just going to pretend that those are LRM launchers. Let's not fight with that too much. You take that off, you get 5 tons back. That's a whole lot of tonnage for what you want to do. If I look around here, what I think I would like to do in this case, let's just see here. Probably go and look for PPC capacitors, stick those on each side, meaning your light PPCs are now quite useful, and you've got 3 tons left of space here, which is quite a good thing. With 3 tons, well, I could add ammos to the launchers. Not really necessary in this case. What would I do here? Could add medium lasers or ER medium lasers. Always a decent idea. Or we could go, since it is going to run you a little bit hot shooting all of that stuff, you can't really add a heat sink because there's not really enough room for it, unfortunately. But you can put in a coolant pod. You've got 8 extra ton left taken out. So you got 2 extra tons. 2 medium lasers would do the job just right there as a balancing act. So basically are a missile boat with some more firepower with the light PPCs. It's a decent enough setup. Xray configuration is an experimental configuration at the time, but all the equipment that was fancy back then is now super common in the 32nd century and beyond. Each arm and each side torso mounts a light PPC with an associated PPC capacitor. Basically, you've got a pair of standard PPCs that you're going to be able to fire in a volley shot, or make that one big punch shot with all 4 of them being charged up and shot at once, which is risky, but it might work. Against tanks and against other things that might get closer, you get a set of Streak 4-tube SRMs fed by a ton of reload, which is good enough to make you a tank hunter, and a few other things. Exploit the holes that your big PPCs are going to do. This is a decent enough setup, and it's actually quite surprising how efficient it ends up being. Golf configuration came out of GM in around 31-34 using some of their more recent weapons and equipment. The main guns are now a pair of rotary AC-5 fed by 5 tons of reload. You might be like, well, that sounds like quite a bit here, but at the speed in which you burn through ammo with a rotary AC-5, it might not even be enough for a mid-length engagement. The small laser is still on there, but in this case, it's a small re-engineered laser, allowing you to cut through specialty armor as well as a reflective armor, which is pretty good, but I'm not a massive fan of the small version of it. The medium is okay, and the large re-engineered laser is actually quite a fancy weapon that I enjoy seeing on a few things, even though it has a few limitations. And as I said, the good people at GM are still working on the Blackjack Omni, and with their own license of the thing, well, they decided to start doing an upgrade kit for the BJ30, and this is something that they sent to me for analysis and for review, and I quite like it, even though I don't think we will be buying it in large amounts. The jump jets are taken off the chassis, allowing you for more flexibility. That U version will be able to have UMUs installed, as an example. Or if you really know you're not going to be using jump jet in this particular situation, you got basically 2 tons that you can play around with, which is not a bad thing. The big change, however, is the replacement of the Nissan 200 XL for a GM 200 XL Plus, which I would say is clan graded, which increased the survivability of the machine by a fair margin, and has those integrated case system for the ammo, meaning that you're not going to blow yourself up as easily. Another big change, of course, is the inclusion of clan-grade ballistic weapons on most configurations, giving you a little bit more weight to play around with, a little bit less space being used by them. That's because GM, Akanar, Korean, and various other federated companies have been able to produce these ballistic weapons in recent years, meaning that we've got new variants of the Blackjack 2 and the Blackjack 3. Omni will be able to use those things as well. This is all well and good. Those things are a little bit more expensive than what we're wanting to pay for a medium mech, and we've got our own things here in the Trade Alliance to work with. So maybe we'll buy a few for demos or for different things, but it's not going to be a prime suspect for us. For the Federated Sons, however, I'm pretty sure they'll be very happy to use them. In the grand scheme of things, I would say the Blackjack Omni is one of the most common and prolific Inner Sphere Omni out there, with the Firestarter Omni as well. Even with the legal bullshittery behind it and all sorts of problems with computers and firmware upgrade, it remains one of the great mech in its own rights. Every configuration is able to hold its own in their fight against other mechs, and even against clan machines, you're going to be able to do well enough that you're going to be a threat. Most military throughout the sphere has a decent number of those things floating around, and even mercenary outfits should be able to acquire those fairly easily, and they're not as expensive as some people might think. Getting a full pod setup for every single configuration might be a little bit expensive and a little bit hard, but if you focus on 1 or 2 configuration, or maybe, just the ones that you know your unit will need, you shouldn't break the bank. It's a true testament to the Inner Sphere's military doctrine as opposed to the clan one, as the medium mech remains the standard machine for the Inner Sphere, while the clans really love their big heavies. So, thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.